The awakening of the fleet. The day started like any other on Earth, with the usual hustle and bustle of people going about their daily routines. But something was different. There was a subtle change in the air, a whisper of something unusual, something waiting to be discovered. It wasn't immediately clear to the people of Earth, but the world was about to change forever. It all started with a strange signal that came out of nowhere. No one knew what it was at first. The signal was faint, barely detectable, and its origin was impossible to trace. It seemed like it was from another world, perhaps even another galaxy. Scientists across the globe scrambled to decode it, but its meaning remained a mystery. The message was simple, but it was clear. Activate the fleet. The message kept repeating, a pattern that could not be ignored. It wasn't long before the highest levels of Earth's military and government were notified. World leaders, scientists, and engineers were summoned to a secret facility where the best minds on Earth gathered to figure out what was happening. As the signal continued to echo through the airwaves, panic began to build. What was the fleet? Who had sent the message? And why now, after so many years of peace? Questions filled the minds of the top officials, but there were no easy answers. The message was cryptic, and yet it felt like a warning. "We have to find out what this is," said General Samuel Greaves, a seasoned military commander. His voice was calm, but there was a glimmer of worry in his eyes. "If this is some kind of alien threat, we need to be ready." The government brought in the brightest scientists, linguists, and engineers from all around the world. They began to analyze the signal. The deeper they looked, the more they began to suspect that this wasn't just some random message. It seemed to be connected to Earth itself, something buried deep under the planet for centuries, perhaps even millennia. Then something strange happened. The signal changed. It stopped repeating the phrase, "Activate the fleet." Instead, the message became more complex, as though it was trying to guide them toward something. It showed coordinates, exact locations on Earth that seemed to be of no particular significance at first. One of the scientists, Dr. Emily Park, a leading expert in ancient civilizations, was the first to make a connection. She recognized the coordinates. They weren't random at all. They pointed to several key locations across the world, places where ancient civilizations had once thrived, but had long since vanished. "This isn't just a signal," Dr. Park said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is a map to something hidden for a long time." The military immediately took action. A team of elite soldiers, along with the brightest minds from across the globe, was dispatched to investigate the first set of coordinates. They traveled to a remote location in the Pacific Ocean, a place that had been unexplored for centuries. It was a part of the world that no one really knew much about, a place that had always been surrounded by mystery. When they arrived, they found an enormous structure beneath the ocean's surface. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The structure was massive, larger than any ship or building that had ever been constructed. It appeared to be made of a material that was unfamiliar to Earth scientists, yet it seemed incredibly durable, almost indestructible. The team immediately set to work to investigate further. As they explored, they uncovered strange symbols etched into the walls of the structure, symbols that no one could immediately decipher. But one thing was clear: the design was not human. This structure, whatever it was, had been built by something else. The military quickly mobilized, bringing in advanced technology to investigate the site. The deeper they went into the structure, the more they realized it was not just an ancient ruin. This place was active, alive, in a sense. Hidden beneath layers of rock and sea, it had remained untouched by time. And now, after centuries of silence, it had been awakened. At the heart of the structure, the team discovered what could only be described as a massive control room. And in that room, they found the first ship. It was not just any ship. It was a warship, a massive vessel designed for destruction. The ship's design was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever created. It was sleek, built for speed and power, with weaponry that could wipe out entire fleets in a matter of moments. This is what the signal was about, Dr. Park said, her voice filled with awe and fear. This is the fleet, and it's been waiting here all this time. But as the team activated the ship's systems, a terrifying realization set in. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was part of something much larger. The fleet was not a single ship, it was a series of ships, hidden across the world, waiting for someone to awaken them. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Humanity had stumbled upon something far beyond their understanding. The ships were ancient, but their technology was far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And now it was in the hands of Earth. The question that loomed over everyone was simple, but terrifying. What would Earth do with this power? No one knew the answer, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The fleet was awake, and the universe was about to learn the true power of humanity. As the team stood in the control room, staring at the massive warship they had just activated, a strange sense of fear and excitement filled the air. The fleet was alive, and humanity had just opened the door to a new era. An era of power, war, and unimaginable possibilities. The only question left was, what would happen next? The answer, however, was something no one could predict. The discovery of the first warship beneath the ocean had sent shockwaves through the entire world. What humanity had uncovered was not just an ancient relic, but an entire fleet of warships, hidden away for millennia. Each ship was a masterpiece of technology, far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. And now, they were alive again. After the initial shock wore off, humanity's leaders had to make a choice. Should they activate the other ships, or was this too dangerous? The question weighed heavily on everyone's minds. But the message had been clear: activate the fleet. There was no turning back now. The world's top scientists, engineers, and military officials worked around the clock to unlock the secrets of the fleet. They knew that the warships were equipped with technology that could change the course of history. But what they didn't know was the full extent of that power. As the days passed, the military began to test the capabilities of the first ship. It wasn't just a vessel for combat. It was a mobile fortress, equipped with weapons that could obliterate entire fleets with a single strike. The ship's hull was indestructible, and its propulsion systems allowed it to move faster than any other known spacecraft. General Samuel Greaves, the leader of the operation, stood on the bridge of the ship, looking out at the vast expanse of space. He had been a soldier his entire life, but nothing could have prepared him for the power they had just unleashed. His fingers hovered over the control panel, feeling the pulse of the ship's engines beneath his hands. This was humanity's greatest weapon, but would it be enough to protect Earth from the galaxy's dangers? "We've barely scratched the surface," General Greaves said to his team. "We need to know what else is hidden in this fleet. If we activate more ships, we might find something even more dangerous than we can handle." But there was no time for hesitation. The galaxy was watching, and the rest of the universe was about to know that humanity had uncovered something incredible. In a secure underground facility, Dr. Emily Park and her team continued to decipher the ancient symbols found inside the first ship. The technology was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The materials used to build the ships were far beyond anything Earth could replicate. The designs were alien, but the technology itself seemed almost familiar. "I think we're dealing with a civilization that understood how to manipulate energy in ways we can't even imagine," Dr. Park said. "This ship's weapons are based on energy patterns we've never seen before. If we can figure out how it works, we could create weapons more powerful than anything the galaxy has ever witnessed." But as the scientists worked, something strange began to happen. The ships, scattered across the globe, began to react. It was as though they were listening to the signals being sent out from the first ship. Each time a new discovery was made, the other ships began to hum, almost as if they were waking up. "We've triggered something," Dr. Park said, her voice full of disbelief. "They're all connected, like a network. This isn't just one ship, it's a fleet, a system of interconnected vessels designed to work together." They were waiting for someone to activate them. As the fleet began to come online, a sense of unease spread throughout the team. The ships were ancient, and they carried unimaginable power. But who had built them? Why had they been hidden for so long? And most importantly, who else in the galaxy would come looking for them now that they were awake? The military was anxious to take the next step. The general and his commanders had always known that humanity would eventually have to fight for survival, but they never expected something like this. The ships were unlike anything they had ever seen before, and now, with the fleet awakening, they felt both a sense of pride and fear. "We've unlocked something," General Greaves said, staring at the map of Earth and the locations of the other ships. "But the galaxy won't just sit idly by while we activate these weapons. We need to prepare for what's coming." Meanwhile, the rest of the world watched in awe as the news spread. The revelation of the fleet, hidden beneath the oceans and buried in ancient ruins, had made headlines across the globe. Nations rallied together in fear and anticipation, wondering what this new power would mean for Earth's future. Could humanity control it, or would they become a target for others who wanted the fleet for themselves? The fleet wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol. It represented everything humanity had fought for: survival, strength, and the determination to rise above all challenges. But it also represented danger. The fleet's true purpose was still unknown, and the galaxy's reaction to Earth's newfound power was unpredictable. As humanity continued to activate the ships one by one, the world's leaders faced a choice. Should they use the fleet's power to secure their place in the galaxy, or should they try to keep it hidden, in case the wrong hands found out about it? The stakes were higher than ever before. The fate of the galaxy could rest in the hands of humanity. But with that power came a responsibility that no one was fully prepared for. The fleet was awake, and the universe was about to feel its wrath. But in the shadows, a far greater threat was already watching. It wasn't just the galaxy that had taken notice of Earth's new power. It was something older, something far more dangerous, and it was coming to claim what was rightfully theirs. The warships may have been the key to humanity's future, but they also attracted the attention of forces that had been in hiding for centuries. The question now was, how far would humanity go to protect their newfound strength? And when the galaxy came knocking, would they be ready for the consequences of waking the Supernova fleet? As the first ship fully powered up, its systems hummed with an energy unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The ship's surface gleamed, bathed in an eerie glow, as if it were awakening from an ancient slumber. Each corner of Earth, from the bustling cities to the remote countryside, felt the reverberation of the ship's reactivation. The world was on edge. This was no longer a simple scientific discovery. It was the beginning of something far more monumental. General Greaves stood before a vast control panel, the holographic map of Earth and the galaxy spread out before him. He glanced at the flickering lights and the steady pulse of the ship, feeling the weight of what had just begun. His fingers hovered over the control pad as his thoughts raced. Activating the first warship had been a gamble, one that could either make or break humanity's place in the galaxy. "Status report, Lieutenant," Graves said, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the storm of thoughts in his mind. Lieutenant Reynolds, standing at the tactical station, quickly examined the readouts before him. "General, the fleet's activation is proceeding without issue. The other ships are responding to the first. We're about to unlock more of their capabilities." "Good," Graves said, but even as the words left his lips, he felt a pang of doubt. They were playing with powers far beyond their understanding. On the other side of the globe, Dr. Emily Park and her team were already delving deeper into the ship's intricate systems. Every component they uncovered seemed more advanced than anything humanity had created. The energy capacitors, which could hold enough power to destroy entire star systems, were unlike anything in existence. The weapons systems were even more staggering. They had only begun to understand the sheer magnitude of what was inside the ship. "Doctor, you need to see this," one of her team members called out. Dr. Park quickly approached, her heart racing. The scientist stood before a console, its screen showing a series of cryptic symbols. As she leaned in, she saw the symbols shift, almost as if they were alive. A line of text appeared in ancient script, and though she could barely understand it, the translation software on her tablet provided a chilling message. "The fleet is calling. Respond." Dr. Park froze. What did that mean? The ships had been dormant for thousands of years, hidden away, but now they were sending a message, a warning, a command. She glanced at her team, who exchanged nervous glances. "The fleet's calling. That's impossible. It doesn't make sense," Dr. Park muttered. "But it's clear that something has triggered this." Back in the command center, General Greaves and his team were dealing with their own discoveries. The fleet, which they had thought was merely a group of powerful ships, was much more than that. It was a network, a system of interconnected vessels capable of sharing information at an unimaginable speed. The ships were no longer just relics of an ancient civilization. They were a functioning part of a much larger structure, something with a purpose that no one could yet comprehend. "This is something more than just a weapon," Graves said as he stared at the holographic map of the fleet's positions. "These ships weren't built just to fight. They were built to communicate, to respond. And they've been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Reynolds asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. The general's gaze hardened. "Waiting for us. Whatever it is, we've activated something far bigger than ourselves." Meanwhile, as the Earth's military leadership began to consolidate their power over the ships, something unexpected was happening in the far reaches of the galaxy. Alien species, from distant worlds and unknown corners of space, were beginning to take notice of the hum of energy emanating from Earth's ships. The Supernova fleet had not gone unnoticed. The ancient warships, though thought to be mere myths, had now become a reality. And the galaxy's most powerful races were beginning to move. In a high-tech command center located on a planet beyond the known edge of the galaxy, a group of alien warlords gathered. Their species had long ruled the stars with an iron fist, their technology far surpassing that of the humans. But the discovery of the fleet, the same fleet they had long believed to be a legend, sent a shockwave of fear through their ranks. "This changes everything," one of the warlords said, his voice cold and calculating. "The humans have awakened the Supernova fleet. Do they know what they've done?" Another warlord, a taller being with silver skin and dark, piercing eyes, clenched his fists. "It doesn't matter. The fleet is ours for the taking. We will go to Earth, and we will claim what should have been ours long ago." The leader of the warlords nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We are not the only ones watching this. If the humans have unlocked the power of the Supernova fleet, then the galaxy is about to shift in ways we cannot predict. We will not let them control this power. We will strike before they can fully realize its potential." Back on Earth, the tension continued to rise. The news of the fleet's reawakening spread across the globe like wildfire. Governments, corporations, and military forces all prepared for what was to come. But no one truly knew how to deal with the consequences of activating such a monumental force. Dr. Park, still struggling to comprehend the full scope of their discovery, stared at the data she had been collecting for days. There was one thing she knew for sure. The ships were not just weapons. They were a message that had been waiting for the right moment to be heard. But now that humanity had heard it, was it too late to stop the inevitable? "General," Dr. Park said, her voice shaking slightly, "we're not just dealing with ancient technology. We've triggered something, a chain reaction that goes far beyond what we can control. If we're not careful, the galaxy will come for us, and it will not be forgiving." Greaves looked at her, his expression grave. "Then we'll have to be ready. The galaxy won't just sit back and let us control this power. We need to prepare for what's coming. But first, we need to understand the fleet fully, before it's too late. The galaxy had taken notice, and humanity had only just begun to understand what they had awakened. The question now wasn't whether the fleet could save them. It was whether the galaxy would allow them to keep it. And in the depths of space, far beyond the reaches of Earth, something ancient and powerful was already beginning to stir. The call had been answered, and the universe was about to feel the consequences of awakening the supernova fleet. The hum of activity was constant in the command center as the fleet's readiness reached its peak. General Greaves stood before the massive holographic display, his eyes scanning the star maps, which were alive with movement. The Earth had not yet fully realized the gravity of their situation, but Greaves knew the storm was already on the horizon. "We have to be ready," he muttered to himself, his fingers tapping on the arm of his chair nervously. Every piece of military intelligence, every scan of the fleet's systems, revealed just how monumental the situation had become. These ships weren't just relics. They were weapons of unimaginable power. They could shake the very foundations of the galaxy, and now they belonged to humanity. In the shadows of the command center, Lieutenant Reynolds approached, his face grave. "General, we've intercepted some communications. It's from the outer galaxy, the ones we feared." Greaves turned sharply, his gaze hardening. "The alien warlords." "Yes, sir," Reynolds replied, handing over a tablet with an encrypted transmission. The message, though partial, was clear enough. The galaxy's most powerful races were aware of the fleet's reactivation, and they were moving quickly. Some factions were already preparing to leave their systems. Others were eager to claim the fleet, and they had no intention of letting humans control such power. "This is worse than we thought," Greaves muttered, absorbing the information. "The galaxy's elite are already gathering their forces. We don't even know what we've triggered." Just as Greaves began to process the magnitude of the threat, an alarm blared in the command center, drawing everyone's attention. A new message had come through, this one more urgent than any before it. "General, it's from Dr. Park. She's decoded another layer of the fleet's systems," a technician called out. Greaves moved quickly, his boots clicking sharply against the polished floor as he rushed to the control console. Dr. Park's face appeared on the screen, her features tight with concern. "General, I found something. Something I don't think I was meant to find," Dr. Park said, her voice tinged with panic. "The fleet. It's not just a military force. It's a network, a vast system of ships connected to each other by an intelligence far greater than anything we've encountered." Greaves felt a chill crawl up his spine. "What do you mean by intelligence, Doctor?" "The fleet itself is sentient," she continued, her voice shaking. "It's been dormant, waiting for the right signal. But now that we've activated it, it's beginning to communicate. And I believe it's reaching out, not just to us, but to others across the galaxy. This is far beyond anything we ever anticipated." Greaves' heart raced. A sentient fleet, that was more than terrifying. It was a game changer. "You're telling me the fleet isn't just a collection of ships. It has its own will." Dr. Park hesitated, looking over her shoulder before returning her gaze to the camera. "Yes, and it's not just waiting to be activated. It's waiting to be controlled. The ships are designed to respond to a chosen leader, a commander. But they don't just take orders. They choose who they follow. The galaxy's most powerful species have known this for millennia." Reynolds spoke up, his voice low and strained. "So what now? If the galaxy's elite already knew about this, why didn't they take it?" "We didn't activate it," Dr. Park replied. "They never had a chance. The fleet was locked away. The key was only discovered by us. But now that we found it..." A pause hung in the air, thick with the weight of her words. It was as if humanity had stumbled upon something that was never meant to be found. And now, they were facing the consequences. "They're coming for us," Reynolds said, his tone grave. "We've awakened something we can't control." Greaves stood frozen for a moment, staring at the map of the galaxy. A realization swept over him like a tidal wave. They had never planned for this. They had unlocked a force beyond their understanding. and now it was sending ripples through the entire galaxy. Earth was no longer just a small planet. Humanity had drawn the attention of some of the most powerful beings in existence. "Prepare the fleet," Graves commanded, his voice cold. "We don't know how long we have before they arrive. If the galaxy wants this power, they'll have to come through us." But as the general ordered the fleet's final preparations, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Even with the mighty warships at their command, the galaxy's other factions were formidable. And while humanity had the edge of surprise, it wouldn't be long before the forces from beyond would strike back with all their might. Far above Earth, in the depths of space, an alien warlord watched the unfolding events from his command ship. His expression was cold, calculating. "They have activated the fleet," he said softly, turning to his advisors. "It is time to claim what was meant for us." The warlord's orders were given in a flurry of activity, and his fleet surged forward, cutting through the void of space. They would not stop until they had seized control of the Supernova fleet, no matter the cost. But unbeknownst to him, another faction had already set its sights on the fleet. From the dark corners of the galaxy, a rival force, one even more powerful and deadly than the warlords, had heard the call of the fleet, and they would not let any other race claim the prize. As the tension mounted across the galaxy, one truth remained clear. Earth's discovery had set in motion a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy. And for the first time in their history, humanity would not just be a passive observer. They had entered the arena, and the stakes were higher than they could ever have imagined. The war for the Supernova fleet had only just begun. The tension in the command center was palpable. General Greaves paced back and forth, his mind racing as the situation continued to unfold at a terrifying pace. The fleet was ready. The enemy forces were closing in, and the implications of what humanity had unleashed now weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Greaves glanced up at the holographic display. The map of the galaxy was alive with activity. Dozens of alien fleets, each more powerful than the last, had shifted course toward Earth. The galaxy had been set ablaze by the activation of the Supernova fleet, and now it was a race against time to defend humanity's newfound power. "We need to prepare for the worst," Graves said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "Reynolds, get me a status update on all systems." Lieutenant Reynolds was at the controls in an instant, tapping commands into the console. The blue light of the holographic displays reflected off his face, and his brow furrowed as he processed the data. "All ships are fully operational, General. The fleet is ready to move at your command, but we've got a problem." Greaves narrowed his eyes. "What kind of problem?" Reynolds hesitated for a moment before speaking. "The alien fleets, they're much larger than we anticipated. And it looks like they're not just coming for the Supernova fleet. They're coming for Earth. They'll be here within hours." The words hit Greaves like a punch to the gut. Humanity had no choice now but to stand and fight. There was no turning back. They were on the verge of an all-out war with the galaxy's most powerful races, and the stakes had never been higher. "We've got no choice," Greaves muttered, his voice steely with resolve. "Prepare the Supernova fleet for battle. We'll meet them head-on." Reynolds nodded, though the weight of the situation was heavy on him. He couldn't help but wonder if humanity's newly acquired power was enough to take on forces that had been reigning supreme for centuries. But there was no time for doubt now. Earth's survival was at stake. Across the fleet, each ship's captain was preparing for the inevitable conflict. The Supernova fleet was vast, each warship a titan of destruction. Massive energy shields hummed to life as the ships powered up their weapon systems. The air in the command center buzzed with activity as each officer worked to ensure that every detail was perfect. This was no ordinary battle. It was the battle that would determine whether humanity would become a dominant force in the galaxy, or whether they would be wiped out in an instant. As Greaves gave the final command, the fleet began to mobilize. The massive warships slid silently through space, their engines glowing as they hurtled toward the approaching alien fleets. The first wave of enemy ships, sleek and menacing, came into view on the screens. The galactic warlords were here, and they had brought an overwhelming number of ships with them. "They're here," Reynolds said quietly, his eyes wide as the first alien vessels emerged from the shadows of deep space. "And they're not alone." Greaves' fists clenched. He had hoped that humanity would have some time to prepare, but it seemed that time was a luxury they could no longer afford. The alien fleets were massive, far more ships than humanity could ever hope to command. But they had one thing that the invaders didn't: the power of the Supernova fleet. As the first shots were fired, the battle erupted into chaos. Energy blasts tore through the void, lighting up the darkness of space with bright, blinding flashes. The Supernova fleet's advanced weaponry was a force to be reckoned with, but the enemy was relentless, launching wave after wave of fighters and bombers, hoping to overwhelm the human ships. Greaves watched the battle unfold from the command center, his heart pounding in his chest. The Supernova fleet was holding its ground for now, but he knew that every second they fought meant more ships lost, more lives at risk. They needed to win, and they needed to win fast. "We can't hold them off forever," Lieutenant Reynolds said, his voice grim. "We've got to come up with a plan, or this is going to be over before we even get started." Greaves' mind raced. He knew they had one advantage: the sentient intelligence of the Supernova fleet. If they could harness it, if they could control it, the fleet could turn the tide of the battle. But that was easier said than done. The ships were incredibly powerful, but they were also unpredictable. They responded to human commands, yes, but they also had a mind of their own. And if they didn't understand the full scope of the threat, they might not fight at their full potential. He turned to Dr. Park, who was working furiously at a console on the far side of the room. "Can we control the fleet's full potential?" he asked, his voice urgent. Dr. Park glanced up, her face pale with exhaustion. "We've been trying, General. But the more I dig into the system, the more I realize we don't even know what we've fully unlocked. This intelligence, it's far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. But I think I can tap into it. Just give me a few more minutes." A few minutes. It felt like a lifetime. But Greaves knew that every second counted. The enemy ships were closing in, and Earth's fate was in the balance. "Do it," Greaves ordered. "Give me whatever you can." With a determined nod, Dr. Park returned to her work, her fingers flying over the console as she accessed the Supernova fleet's systems. The hum of energy in the command center grew louder as the fleet's ships prepared to unleash their full destructive power. But the question remained: would it be enough to turn the tide of the war, or had humanity already bitten off more than they could chew? In the darkness of space, the alien warlords waited, watching. They had underestimated humanity once before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. They had no idea just how powerful the Supernova fleet could be when it was fully unleashed, and neither did humanity. The war had only just begun. The deep hum of the Supernova fleet was now deafening. Every ship in the fleet was ready, their systems fully charged, awaiting the moment of release. On the command bridge of the flagship Defiance, General Greaves stared out into the vastness of space. The enemy fleets had moved in closer, their ships lining the sky like an overwhelming tide. There was no turning back now. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on the shoulders of the Supernova fleet. "Dr. Park, how close are we?" Greaves asked, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting within him. "I'm almost there, General," Dr. Park replied, her face a picture of both exhaustion and determination. "I've managed to tap into the deeper layers of the fleet's intelligence. The ships are responding. I think we can activate the full spectrum mode, but I'm not entirely sure what will happen once we do." "What do you mean by not entirely sure?" Greaves asked sharply. "The fleet's it's incredibly advanced," Dr. Park continued, tapping away at her console, her eyes flickering between the screens. "It's almost as if they have their own agenda. But I've isolated the primary control pathways. If I engage this next protocol, the ships will become more autonomous, more powerful, but we won't be able to control them in the same way we do now. Greaves took a deep breath. There were risks, but humanity had never been a species to shy away from the unknown. The Supernova fleet had already defied the galaxy's expectations once, and it was time to see if they could do it again. Do it, Greaves ordered. We'll adapt. Humanity adapts. Dr. Park hesitated for a fraction of a second before slamming her hand down onto the activation button. A low, deep rumble vibrated through the entire ship and across the fleet. Similar pulses shot through each warship. The Supernova fleet came to life in a way no one had ever witnessed before. The ships, once just mindless war machines, now exuded an eerie intelligence. They were no longer simply responding to commands. They were anticipating. The first enemy ship in the lead of the alien fleet fired a salvo of plasma rounds toward the approaching human ships. It was the first shot in what would likely be an apocalyptic battle. But before the plasma rounds could reach their target, the Defiance's energy shields flared to life, emitting a deep blue glow that absorbed the attack with ease. The alien ships fired again, and again, their weapons seemingly futile against the now enhanced Supernova fleet. General, the fleet is engaging autonomously. Reynolds, the tactical officer, said in disbelief. The ships are predicting enemy movements and intercepting their fire before it even reaches them. Greaves could hardly believe his eyes. The Supernova fleet was now fighting like a single united force, a mind of its own. Every weapon was coordinated. Every shield was perfectly timed. The warships began their counterattack, firing massive energy beams that tore through the alien fleet's defenses with ease. The first alien warship shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, its core disintegrating under the intense pressure. Then another, and another. The Supernova fleet was not just surviving. They were overwhelming the alien forces at an astonishing rate. "We have them on the run, General," Lieutenant Reynolds shouted, his voice filled with excitement. "The enemy is retreating. It's working." But Greaves knew better than to get comfortable. The alien forces might have been caught off guard by the ferocity of humanity's response, but they were far from defeated. They had underestimated humanity once, but that would not happen again. As the battle raged on, new waves of enemy ships began to flood in. There were more of them, and they were bigger. Even though the Supernova fleet was performing better than anyone could have expected, the sheer scale of the enemy forces was overwhelming. "Reynolds, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Dr. Park, I need full diagnostics on the fleet's energy reserves," Greaves ordered. "This won't be a quick fight. We need to be ready for the long haul." Dr. Park's fingers flew over the controls, the strain of the situation clearly written across her face. "The fleet's power reserves are holding steady for now, but if we continue to engage at this level, we might drain them faster than we expect. We need to pace ourselves." Greaves frowned. He knew they couldn't afford to be too cautious, but if they pushed too hard, they risked depleting their resources too soon. They needed to strike a balance between aggression and defense. "I want every ship to focus on taking down the enemy's capital vessels," Greaves commanded, his voice unwavering. "We'll go for their command ships and cripple their leadership. If we cut off their heads, the rest will fall." The battle continued to rage, but the Supernova fleet was showing no signs of slowing down. The enemy was losing ships at an alarming rate, but they were still relentless in their pursuit. They launched wave after wave of fighters, attempting to break through the human defenses. But no matter how many ships the aliens sent, the Supernova fleet was always one step ahead. Greaves' mind raced as he analyzed the tactics of the enemy. They were smart, far smarter than he had anticipated. But it was clear that they were not prepared for what humanity had unleashed. The Supernova fleet was evolving in real time, adapting to the enemy's every move. It was a strategy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. As the battle continued, Greaves felt a renewed sense of confidence. Humanity had been thrust into the galactic stage as nothing more than a curiosity. Now, with the power of the Supernova fleet at their command, they were a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never look at them the same way again. "General," Reynolds said, his voice full of urgency, "the enemy's reinforcements are incoming. If we don't finish this fast, we'll be overwhelmed." Greaves' eyes hardened. "Then we finish it now." With a final decisive order, the Supernova fleet unleashed the full force of its firepower. The enemy had nowhere to retreat, and the massive energy beams that tore through their ships would ensure they never would. The tide had turned. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And with that, the battle reached its brutal, devastating climax. The battlefield was silent for a moment, as though the universe itself had held its breath. The once mighty alien fleet, which had overwhelmed countless civilizations, was now a shadow of its former self. Massive chunks of wreckage floated aimlessly in the cold expanse of space. Explosions flickered here and there, the remnants of ships that had been disintegrated in the Supernova fleet's relentless onslaught. Humanity had done the impossible. General Greaves stood tall on the bridge of the Defiance, his eyes scanning the now empty expanse where the enemy fleet once stood. The Supernova fleet, having obliterated their attackers, now hovered in place, its ships awaiting further orders. Greaves felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. "General," Reynolds spoke up, his voice calm but tinged with awe. "We did it. The enemy forces have been routed. No one could have predicted a victory like this." Greaves nodded, his mind sharp despite the exhaustion settling in. Not a victory. A message. A message to the galaxy, to all the races who thought humanity was weak. To those who dismissed them as mere children among giants. The superhuman power of the Supernova fleet, coupled with the fearsome resolve of Earth's warriors, had proven that no one was safe. The enemy might be defeated for now, but Greaves knew that the galaxy's factions would take notice. There would be retribution. There would be others who would come to test humanity's strength. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new era. Dr. Park entered the bridge, her face pale from the strain of managing the fleet's advanced technology, but a spark of triumph burned in her eyes. "General, I've been analyzing the results of the battle," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "The fleet is holding up. Our tactics, they're more than just new, they're evolving. I don't know what you've unlocked in these ships, but they're reacting faster than even I can keep up with." Greaves took a deep breath. It's the AI. The ships are more than just tools. They're becoming something else, something alive. The weight of those words hung in the air, a chill creeping into the room as the truth settled in. Humanity had unlocked a level of technology so advanced, so dangerous, that the galaxy had no idea what was truly unleashed. And Greaves knew, deep down, that the galaxy would never let this go unnoticed. Reynolds glanced at the sensors. "General, we're picking up strange signals from the outskirts of the system. It looks like we've attracted the attention of more ships." Greaves looked at the view screen, his heart tightening. They had just won the battle of their lives, but already new threats were looming on the horizon. If the Supernova fleet had been the galaxy's weapon of shock, this new force would undoubtedly be its counterattack. "How many?" Greaves asked, his voice calm but urgent. "Too many to count, General," Reynolds replied. "The readings show a massive fleet. We're not sure who they are, but they've locked onto our position." Dr. Park's fingers flew over the console, bringing up a live feed of the incoming fleet. The ships were massive, with weaponry unlike anything Greaves had ever seen. Their designs were sleek, almost fluid, and their energy signatures were off the charts. "They found us," Park muttered, her face tense. "But we've only just begun." Greaves clenched his fists. "Prepare for battle. We'll show them what humanity is made of. We don't back down. Ever." The crew moved quickly, taking their positions and readying the fleet for what was sure to be another fight. Greaves watched them with pride. Humanity had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But the war was far from over. And now, with the galaxy's eyes trained on Earth and its mighty supernova fleet, humanity had no choice but to prove itself once more. The incoming fleet loomed ever closer, and Greaves knew one thing for certain. The universe had no idea what it had just awakened. Humanity, once seen as weak and insignificant, had risen from the shadows of the unknown. And now, the galaxy would tremble before the might of Earth's warriors. As the supernova fleet powered up, ready for its next fight, Greaves gave the order. Let's remind them why they should never underestimate us. The fleet responded, their engines flaring to life as they prepared to face whatever the galaxy threw at them. The battle for humanity's place in the stars had just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. For better or for worse, the universe had just met humanity, and it would never forget what had come next.